Meeting's called to order. Could you stand pledge allegiance to the vote of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible. Okay, we spent, or had an executive meeting from 6:08 to 6:58 regarding personnel, negotiations, strategy, consideration of land purchase, and COVID safety report.
Mr. Brookhart.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Mr. Kroll.
Here.
Dr. Gatachu.
Here.
Dr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Reichert.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Clauser.
Here.
Just a reminder to please talk into your mics.
Board will take action to approve the meeting minutes from April 11th, the 2022 board meeting as presented. A motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the Finance Committee reports, Mr. Katachu.
We had a meeting today between 5 and 6 p.m., mostly answering questions that came from the community as well as board members, some line item issues that needed to be clarified, and also committee has asked whether some of the budget in there is justified. The business manager was able to explain to them, and I think they were pretty satisfied. There's not a whole lot of detail that I would like to mention. That committee meeting, like any other committee meeting, is open to the public, and we invite every interested person to come and attend. That would be 5 p.m. before every monthly board meeting. It will be in that LGI. What's the name?
Library.
Yeah, of course, at the library, 5 to 6 p.m. Thank you.
Curriculum, Mr. Katachu.
Curriculum committee meeting was supposed to be last Wednesday, but as well as Dr. Bickhart, was not able to make it, so we canceled the meeting, and we will resume it next month.
Building and Grounds, Mr. Reichert.
Yes, we had a meeting today at 4:05. We talked about several things. We talked about some water runoff below the tennis court, how they tested it to see where it may be gone or may not be gone. Talked about putting in some maybe larger stones down there in the bottom. And they also are coming up with, need some permits to do some work. Out at Liberty Valley, they are doing some work out there. That's where the permits were for, so they could start working on Liberty Valley. And they're working on that slowly. And they talk about some of the roof vents and stuff that may be coming in late for us for the production of re-renovating the Liberty Valley. It might be November before we get our vents from the top. And they talked about replacing the steps one side at a time, going up and down from one level to the other level. And they're talking about replacing the amosite down at the middle school to decide whether they want to do part of it or do all of it. That's a big topic right now to talk about. Thank you.
EITC, Ms. Ely?
There was no meeting since the last EITC meeting. That was already reported.
CS Trust, Ms. Cooper?
I wasn't able to make it, Bobby was.
The CS Trust approved the final insurance rates for the 22-23 fiscal year. The final rates did not change from the not-to-exceed rates, so the average increase is a 5.4% increase. The CS Trust also presented the financial reports for the year ended 6/30 of 2022, and it was approved by the trustees. Geisinger gave a presentation and update on the wellness program, which Danville does participate in, and presented to continue with the CS Trust and the member districts at no cost. So Geisinger does this annually for the wellness at no cost, and Danville does participate. So they're going to continue to do that for the upcoming year, and that includes flu shots as well. The CS Trust solicitor presented bylaws, and the trustees approved them. CS Trust did not have up-to-date bylaws, and so that was approved at the last meeting. And the trustees approved new officers for the CS Trust.
Head Start, Mr. Reichert.
Okay, at Head Start, they announced that the families who qualify for SNAP benefits are now eligible for the Head Start program. That's hoping that this will allow families who with incomes a little too high still may be eligible for the program. Head Start will be applying for quality improvements supplemental funds. The available amount is approximately $10,000. These funds will be used to increase staff salaries, offset increased costs of fringe benefits, and to enhance services to children who are dual learners, language learners. The recruitment for the next school has already begun. Head Start enrollment is 85 children, and the pre-count is 36. To complete an application, call a Head Start office or complete a pre-application on the district's website. Thank you.
Thank you. The 2021-2022 Danville Area School District School Board Goals. Our mission statement is the Danville Area School District, a partnership of family, school, and community, is committed to the education and growth of the whole individual. The vision statement is Danville Area School District is a collaborative learning community where students have the opportunity to reach their individual potential. Our commitment resides in molding a resilient, effective communicator who has the requisite skills to be a successful citizen in an ever-changing society. The goals are student well-being. Danville Area School Board will promote the implementation of evidence-based social emotional learning programming and practices across the district. Fiscal responsibility. Danville Area School Board will coordinate with the superintendent and business managers to preserve long-term financial stability for our district. Student success. The Danville Area School District School Board will support the development of a continuum of services and pathways for student learning that will help students understand the full spectrum of opportunities upon graduation. District operations. School board will endorse and develop a long-range plan to address the district's building and facilities needs to ensure our physical plant can be effectively and efficiently addressed the needs of our students, staff, community for the next 20 years. Climate and culture. The Danville School District School Board will promote a safe environment as the key to social, emotional, and academic success. And superintendent's report.
right, enrollment is fairly steady with, my numbers are a little off up there, 2,248 students, so 2,248 students. Head Start has a number of, according to what I have here, 100 in Head Start pre-K counts. In the primary building, there are 513 students. At Liberty Valley at 507. Middle school is 497. The high school is 631, and we currently have 122 students at the tech. One of the other things, the cyber school enrollment hasn't really changed. There's been some movement, but not a big change. The one thing I do want to note is that our homeless student population has increased a great deal over the course of this year. So we currently, in April, have 14 students who are considered homeless. This doesn't include students who might be considered migrant because they may have a home. This is students that truly are maybe living at Gatehouse, doubling up with other people. They could actually be living in another district but have been Danville students, so therefore we're transporting them. So that number is shifting, and that's of concern to know that there are that many students in our district that do not have a permanent home. At the Danville High School, we have a lot going on. You'll see a picture there in front of Bloomsburg University. That's our Danville data miners. They took 6th place out of 48 teams at Bloomsburg University's high school programming competition. And they traveled to Bloomsburg to take this event. Another event on April 28th was the Model UN Conference, and we had 6 Danville students travel to Bloomsburg as well. They were paired into delegations and placed into a specific United Nations committees. They participated. They had to write a position paper that outlined their country's position on the assigned topics and research political and economic allies within the UN. And understand, this isn't a one-day event. This is where they have gone up over a course of time, but on the 28th, it was the culminating activity. Also, we have students who are taking AP testing at this time. We have these events, field day, senior exit interviews, a lot happening in the month of May for seniors and other students as well. So May is a real busy month at all our buildings, but especially at our high school. And again, the eSports Forge team is doing well. This last event we actually had a professional announcer that volunteered his times to do the announcing for the program, so it was pretty neat to watch. And that is on the website on our eSports page or on YouTube as well, if you want to get a flavor of what these guys are doing. They're doing amazing jobs. They really are. Okay. Middle school. At the middle school, we're proud of our Connects team. I've talked about them just about every month because they just keep winning. So they took first place in regionals, and now they're headed to states. So we're still going to talk about them again next month, I think. The Kindness Club created a egg hunt, and they raffled off baskets. They raised $143 for the club's future projects. The Junior Honor Society, down there in the bottom row, was the induction on April 7th. There were 10 8th graders, 63 7th graders, for a total of 73 students inducted. And again, that would be on the Danville Middle School Facebook page or on their website. You see those students with a shovel. They are planting dogwood trees in honor of Earth Day and the central area there at the middle school, so to beautify their school. And additionally, you'll see the students in their ties and white shirts and the young lady. On the 23rd, these middle school students participated in the Pima All-District Middle School Jazz Band at Jersey Shore High School. The students rehearsed together all day with a guest conductor, performed a concert that evening, and at our middle school level and across our entire district, our music program is enhancing the life of many students and definitely giving them opportunities that they may not have if we didn't have the quality music program that we now have. At Liberty Valley, our 10-week stock market challenge concluded on Friday, the 22nd of April, and we had close to 50 students who participated this year. So all the students entered the elementary division, all the participating students who entered the elementary division, and were given an option of entering a second game at the middle school level. So we have students here who have performed very well on all levels. The students were given $100,000 of virtual money on Valentine's Day, had 10 weeks to invest it, and they definitely did well. It was a turbulent time because you know the market is very turbulent over the past few months. So they did some interesting investing, but they certainly came out well overnight. We had one student comb through suggested websites to find an Indonesian bank to make almost $60,000 overnight, only to hold on to it and lose it over a span of 2 weeks. So they're really learning what the stock market is about. You can also see today was the spelling bee. I didn't get the results of that yet, but I'm sure that'll be posted on the website or on the Facebook pages. And the Liberty Valley concert for 5th grade is May 19th. That's the only concert that they have left. Primary building, they had their fun run on the 5th of May. The kids are there getting their drinks, and that's just an opportunity for the kids to run their way into summer, so to speak. And it supported Home School Association. That was their fundraisers. They got drink breaks, they got dancing to a DJ, they had bracelets for participating, just an all-out fun time for the students. Cinco de Mayo is our Spanish holiday on the 5th, so you can see the building was hopping on the 5th. They were celebrating and learning about the culture of Mexico and Cinco de Mayo. So there they're doing the hat dance around the hat in the one picture. Just so you know, they're learning a great deal, and that was all the elementary primary classes that got to do that. It wasn't just one group. And I want you to look at that green blob, all right? That was a science experiment for the kindergarten. And look at that young man's face. There's nothing better to see than when these students discover something, how special it is. Guess what they discovered? They did an experiment with the M&Ms. Okay, and they put them in the water with the M facing upward, and you can't really see it on that, the picture from this far away. They made their predictions, okay, and then they discovered that the letter M floats up off of the M&M candy piece. So the letter M is a separate stamp, sticker, I don't know what you want to call it, connected to their candy. Their reactions were priceless, as you can see, and they realized that what was happening, they just were like, whoa. So super excited for those kiddos, too. Danville Head Start had their Spring Into Math Night. Head Start always emphasizes their importance of math with the Math Night event for the families, highlighting patterns, numbers and number operations, measurement, space, and shapes, all beautiful preschool activities. We had activities for our students and families to reason, predict, and problem solve, as well as formulate and interpret data. We love partnering with the families to create memorable learning experiences, and I have to say that as they go into and create these experiences for the families, they are also helping the families become better teachers for their children. I think I got that slide in there twice. Jeff, go for it again. And whoa, I am very delighted to say that our 2022 Feeding School Kids Register Roundup program was a success. We were awarded $3,826.13. COVID update. There is a trend, it is trending up. Montour County is now considered high, but we have to always remember that because we have such a low population, the percentage is very easy to get it into the high category. So what we're seeing is that right now on an average 7-day number, there's an increase by 5 individuals. Our hospitalization has risen, deaths have remained the same, so we're averaging 5 cases a day in Montour County, which they're calling that a 118% increase. But again, that has to do with because we only have a little over 18,000 people in our county. More importantly, if you look to the other side of the slide, you'll see the fully vaccinated numbers. Among all ages, there are 79% of our residents in Montour County are already vaccinated, fully vaccinated. For those 5 and up, it's 84%, and those 65 and older, it's 95%. So that's extremely high around numbers for the COVID vaccines. And then the last slide, you can find my slides always at the website on this district school board page, and that's just some upcoming events that are going to be happening for the middle school. Too many to mention, but I thought it'd be nice for a reference for people who were interested. So, and that's that. Thank you. That goes with the picture of that little boy's face. Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Okay, the floor is open for public comment. Public comment. Next, we have a transportation study presentation. Ms. Ely?
A few months ago, the board approved PASBO to come in and look at our transportation, how we collect our data for the audit purposes and our payments and subsidy to PDE. So this is their final report, and it is attached to the board agenda, so you have this to review. Next page, Jeff. So they noted some of our best practices, up one maybe, Jeff, sorry, or down one. Next page, there we go. Some of the best practices is that we do have a transportation software. Part of the reason why I suggested PASBO to come in to review our data is that we transition software, transportation software, from the previous year to the year 2021, 2020-2021 school year. So we transitioned software, which did cause some issues, which will be further explained in this presentation. But we do all of the routing, including special education, and they thought that was important to note because some districts do have their contractors do the routing. So this leaves it into the district's hands. The district handles all parent requests, including requests for new bus stops, and the district generally has 3 camera systems to all elementary school buses. We're working through grants and other opportunities to get cameras in high school and middle school buses, and we do have them on a few. We're still working towards that goal. Just recently, the state came out and said that it will not pass inspection with our mid-mount cameras because it hangs too low, so we are looking at the options for that. Every school district is going through it. They gave us a year to review what we have and to make decisions. They said as of July 1st, unless there's an additional waiver, which we haven't heard about, as of July 1st, they won't pass inspection. And they noted that the overall efficiency of the transportation system is excellent. The routing and the students assigned are excellent for the PDE subsidy reimbursement for the district. They gave recommendations to the district on how to better upkeep our records and collect and maintain the information. So I'm not going to go into details with this. Some of this we obviously have already done, but some of this would be stuff that we would implement and update our processes and procedures internally. And then I think it's page 4 of the PDF, or page 4 of the document, one more. So this is Again, we did an internal review of our payments to our 7 transportation contractors, and we had to manually calculate the transportation payments in the 2021 school year, and due to an error, 3 contractors were overpaid. It was overpaid by $117,000. So I want to preference that this was a reconciliation process that was done internally, and then PASBO came in and confirmed the amount of overpayment. PASBO offered 3 different types of reconciliation options, and on the board agenda tonight, you'll see that one of the transportation contractors did decide to pay back under option 1, and then 2 of them decided to actually make a 4th option that we're recommending through the solicitor review and approval, which is the payback through the length of the contract. So I want to say that the $117,000 would be part of the excess cost to the district, which is refunded entirely 100% from the state based on the subsidy payment that we receive, and it will be corrected with the state as well. So the state actually paid, or would have paid $117,000 more than what they should have been. So I have to correct it on both ends of that, and so that's being corrected. If approved tonight, those 3 agreements. So they moved on and talked about the subsidy payments on page 5. Because of COVID, there were different options that the school can choose. One of the other things that made it complicated was 2021 was COVID, and there were days that the contractors didn't drive, and so that took into consideration with these payments to the contractors. They got paid less than historically. If you go to page 8, the cost per student, page 8 of the document, Jeff. Now you guys can read through this entirely, but you can see Danville's cost per student is about $807.93, and the other school districts are listed, so you can see we're low or high, low, middle, average for the districts, for the cost per district. If you go to cost per student, go to the cost per vehicle, which if you look on page 10, you can see Danville area school district pays about $39,569.86 in 2019. So we're a little bit above middle. And then in 2020, we're pretty much middle with $38,870. The difference is the or the days that the contractors didn't drive, and that kind of skews it a little bit based on what each district decided to do during that COVID year. So if you go to the last page, Jeff. So this shows our excess cost for our PDE subsidy. You could see in 2017, our excess cost for transportation was $380,000. In 2020, our excess cost was $455,000. And that is paid entirely from the PDE subsidy payments. And then we do get reimbursed about 50% of the others. So total, it's about 69% that we get reimbursed in total, but it's 50% until excess cost and 100% of excess cost. Is there any questions on the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you. We have a presentation from Montour County Skynet. Mr. Ryan?
I'm just going to give a quick synopsis of what we've been discussing with Montour County and Drive, and it's actually SkyPacket. It's not Skynet. That's, I think, the Terminator program. But anyways, a few months back, Montour County reached out and they expressed interest in connecting some of their buildings with a wireless network on top of one of our buildings, because we have an advantage with the high school. Basically has a perfect view of the entire town of Danville. So they came to me and, wanted to discuss some options. And, at the same time, we wanted to do some things with redundancy in our network. So it kind of worked out better, good for all of us to have an agreement. So we started to work forward, and also Drive is also met with us as well. So basically, just to give a 10,000-foot view, because we're still working out the details. And, without all the information, I'm not going to get into any great detail, but they would put some antennas on top of our building, which would allow them to connect to EMA and connect back to the courthouse. And so they would do it from the high school, and that would serve Montour County. Of course, SkyPacket from up there would also, who is going to do the work, would be able to serve residential, which would also work for us within the town of Danville, where we have some places where we can't reach internet access for students. We'd be able to do that from that location. And then, actually for the district itself, it would provide us like a completely redundant internet connection in case of failover. If our connection, which runs out along Route 11 here, would fail or they'd hit a pole, it would give us an alternate connection to continue business services, which would allow us to get to our financial system, which is cloud-based, our student information system, which is cloud-based, and then of course, all of our applications within the district itself used by teachers on a day-to-day basis. We haven't had that many outages. I'm gonna knock on wood, because we've had really good success, but we put more and more emphasis on the internet. So this would provide us a failover that we could rely on in a situation where we would lose internet outage. So it's a win-win-win for all of us, but of course, details have to be ironed out. We have to work out, insurance, in case something would happen on our roof. There's some contingencies set where they do some rental things for the space, and then of course they provide a service for us free of charge. There would be some sharing of buying the initial equipment, but it is very low cost compared to what we would pay for a service year in and year out. So it's something we're working towards, and I think we're all happy with. We just wanted to give you the initial synopsis of where we're going with it, and when we get to a good point, everyone will be in here and we'll do a presentation and provide you with all the details on what's happening with this particular agreement. So that's it. Any questions?
What did you say it was called?
The company, SkyPacket.
What kind of a range are we looking at here with your,
Well, they can hit miles with this thing, so
I'm talking about over that house.
is your house within view of the? Yeah, we could hit it. They're talking about some of the places up the valley that have trouble getting line of sight to some towers and whatnot, that we may be able to hit that as well. But once they get it and they start doing some initial and get the equipment up there, they won't be able to tell. But yeah, these things are good for miles. Yep. Any other questions? All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the board will take action to approve consent agenda items. The consent
I'd like to remove 14.1 from the consent agenda.
Okay.
13.5, 13.6.
All right, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items with the exception of 13.5, 13.6, and 14.1?
Motion to approve. A second.
Carrie?
And I have to remove them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, now who are my motions? Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve the payment of invoice 8215 in the amount of $9,458.75 to K&W Environments for ongoing preparation of site layout, grading, and stormwater plans for the athletic fields, as presented.
A motion to approve.
Second.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart, Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve payment of invoice 47751 in the amount of $10,000, or excuse me, $10,493.75 to KCBA Architects for professional services rendered through March 30th, 2022 for the Liberty Valley renovations as presented.
A motion.
Second.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart, Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. The board will take action to accept the bid from KCBA Architects in the amount of $717,091.65 with a construction contingency in the amount of $250,000, bringing the potential construction cost to $967,000 as presented. Motion?
Again, I motion to approve.
Second?
Discuss and have questions. We know how badly it's needed. I don't think it's a question how much project, and I think we all know how much costs have gone up. cost of the project. I know because I was in buildings and grounds,
Mr. Burkett?
Ken or whomever.
Turn on your mic.
Sorry.
Mr. Burkett?
How about now? Okay.
Can you explain why the contingency is that amount? You have to come to the mic.
Is it on? Hello? Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, what was underneath that site? I guess at one time was an old steel mill of some sort,
Iron
or
Forge.
some foundry of some sort. Last year, in front of the teacher's parking lot, in the grass courtyard, we had an enormous sinkhole that we had an excavator come in and excavated, and we went down probably 20 feet and found a really nice brick stair entrance to who knows what was under there. The thing about the contingency, I had actually asked them to put a high contingency on there. Some of the areas where they did the test coring for that parking lot have about 4 inches of stone underneath before you hit the slag and the dirt and everything else. Other areas were ample and should support it, but we don't know till we open it up. I would rather over budget and hope we don't need to use it all rather than under budget. And if it even exceeds, this is a large contingency. If it exceeds that, it should not exceed it by a drastic amount. I originally asked that they over excavate 2 foot down across the whole surface and fill it in with stone and come back. Because we honestly do not know. This is one of those situations you do not know what you're getting into. It's an open-ended question. I think that's what scared all the previous school boards, is because you really don't have a handle on the cost. We know how much it costs to pave it. We have unit pricing. We don't know what type of unsuitable soils we're going to have or not have. Till we did core samplings. They have a complete map of that. And according to the core samplings, is telling us that we should budget a large amount for unsuitable soils. The best I can do. We really don't
No,
know.
I
It
appreciate
didn't
it.
help you, I'm sorry.
No,
but,
you explained it to me earlier. I appreciate it.
It's
I
really,
just-
it's a bad site.
Yeah.
It's a bad site, but if you're looking at staying there for 10 years, you have to do something. We tried to patch it. Every time we patch it, it spider webs around the patch, and the holes get larger. They don't get smaller. It's just a matter, unfortunately, petroleum and fuel oil is up, so paving's up. It's just a matter of whether you want to attack it now or wait for later. It's not going to get better, not in the near future.
I guess. So I guess at least one of my concerns with it is the long-term occupancy of that building in the larger strategic plan. And so spending almost $1 million to fix that, not planning on staying in there 10 years is a significant, especially with the fact that we're already over budget. We're going to have to make up a gap.
So we talked about this, I don't know, a couple of months ago, I believe we said whether we're gonna stay there or we're gonna sell it. Without fixing that, you're not gonna get a decent price on that. Am I correct? So.
Okay, Ken, I'll repeat what you're saying. You need to use a mic. Mr. Burkett is saying that if we do pave it, it would be an asset upon sale, that somebody would want it, but that would make a huge difference with the paving. The other piece is, right now, we're not in the condition to move forward in a new building. We really aren't, and I can't expect us to be even considering things for 5 years, and it could be 5 years after that, we would even have a building. So I can see us being in that building for another 10 years reasonably, and maybe longer, but reasonably I can see us being in there, because we just, financially, we need to stabilize some things, and that long-range plan is looking at it at that point.
Mrs. Ely, How much is, what do we have in capital projects? About, you don't have to, just a ballpark. Sorry, okay. Yeah, no, I know. Okay.
So in capital reserve, as of June 30th of 2021, we had $5,255,487.
Okay. And that, Liberty Valley's not coming out of that, that's a bond,
So part of the Columbia Montour Votech
right?
will be transferred out of those funds that we set aside, and that's budgeted, but not the majority of the project. We did do a bond for the Liberty Valley Primary School and Columbia Montour Votech.
Okay, thank you.
And athletic fields.
Okay.
I'll add another comment. Had a lot of kids go through the middle school and spent a lot of time in and around there. Besides all the efforts that we've made and continue to try to take what we're dealing with and make it reasonable, each winter becomes a new set of challenges. And that ponding and pooling and icing effects that we experience routinely here in this part of Pennsylvania is, to me, another concern that shouldn't be like missed in this discussion, because where one slip, broken leg, and someone falls, and it's not to discount the efforts to keep the pit, because we do a great job there. But when you're dealing with the magnitude of potholes and degradation and continually fighting that like the team has fought, that's another consideration to think about, that we've got some safety exposures when we start to get into the cycles of winter.
And the axle of my car. So, from what I heard, I mean, that $250,000 really isn't a contingency. We know we're going to use it. But based on your core samples. So it's almost a guarantee then it's going to need more money if anything else above and beyond that. And we don't know what that may be. Sorry.
I don't think after the 250,000, it would be substantially more. I mean, if you're hit the $400,000 mark in contingency, that's half the driveway. That's half the project. But I don't want to stand here 6 months from now and find out it went to 1.5 either.
Right.
But based on the core samples, that should be a fair contingency. These architects and engineers that look at these projects, they don't want to present a number to the school board and then find out, oh, by the way, you missed it by 30%. Because then when it's time to give them a recommendation, obviously you're going to tell them exactly what they've done. So they did their best based on geotechnical engineers that they have in-house to determine how much we need. It should be extremely accurate. Do we know for sure? No, because nobody really knows what's under there, unless somebody was here, prior to that. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at keeping the building for a considerable period of time, we've almost gotten to the point where we don't have a lot of alternatives. I mean, now in the wintertime when it ices up, we have cars sliding down the road. That's not a good consideration there. Mm-hmm. It came in two parts. You can do the entire thing, or you can piecemeal it. I think there's an option, I know there's an option there for an alternate to do a part of it. But you're going to be back to do it again. Even if you do take the lower number and just repair the front and the rear of the building, you'll be back within 2 years doing the same thing, and who knows where the petroleum prices are going to be at that time.
And, yeah, do they give you any time frame of any kind that they feel their project will hold up? Do they have any idea how long they think she'd hold up under normal circumstances?
I can get an exact quote from them, but you're typically looking at 15 years.
Okay. That's good to know,
That's typical,
because
15 to 20.
we want to use it for 10, so I hope so.
Well, no, but you're looking at typically 15 to 20 years
Okay.
for it to be redone, once it's done correctly.
Yeah, it's important, it's done correctly, it's important, because if it's not, it won't last.
So, Ed, the other, are you done?
Is that?
Are you done?
Go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things we discussed was, I think you were considering digging up to 20 feet, am I correct, or something? There was some work that needs to be done, which is probably more of a foundational type of work, and from then on.
That was what was in the center part.
Yeah,
That's what we had done when we found a sinkhole last year.
Right,
And we
so-
dug down 20 feet. As far as the parking lot's
So-
concerned, we're looking at like an overdig, it's, the maximum I would see would be like 4 feet.
This is the work that will eventually need less maintenance down the road, right? So if we end up staying there for 15 years, the amount of maintenance that's needed 15 years from now, after we do this repair that is recommended,
We
is
shouldn't
not
do
going to
it.
be much.
No, shouldn't have any maintenance if we put it down, honestly, other than sealing it every few years. We shouldn't have any, but it's a large number to swallow.
That's very important to make sure you keep it sealed. You will lose it.
Yeah, we're finding that out with the others, parking lots around the district.
Have the geotechnical engineers explored, instead of having such a large contingency, expand the front-end scope of doing extensive soil borings to get a more definitive understanding of the footprint than to take what we have and say, based on what we know, our professional position is what we're looking at. We spend, throw a number for the conversation's sake, 50 grand to do more coil borings. Would that give us a more definitive picture of what we can expect, which would
You-
offset that
You
large
could do
contingency
that.
amount?
I would have to double check. There's a considerable number of corings that were done.
You
I don't
put, you
have
put
the
that big
number
a
off my head.
contingency on a number, there's a lot of uncertainty. That's
Um,
what contingency
There
is,
is,
right?
there still is, but it at that point, it gets to the point how many corings you want to do and how close you want to do them. The fact that we really don't know what was under there, was there some type of a building, a factory? I know talking to some of the guys on the maintenance, talk about, how they played football and getting tackled and falling slag, so obviously there was some kind of a steel-oriented foundry or plant or something down there. We won't know till we start digging that and start scraping off the surface of it. Now, what they're planning on doing in the proposal is they're going to over-excavate, and then what they do, they come back with a Portland cement and stone mixed into to the base. So it kind of creates a bridge for the material that's underneath. So that's why they don't feel they're going to have tremendously deep excavations. They're thinking 2 foot, 4 in some of the severe areas. And it's because of the, and I just can't think of exactly what they call it, full reclamation, I think is what they call it, where they actually mix, they strip the material off, they mix it with Portland cement, they put it back down for a base, and then they blacktop over that. So you will have something that's going to carry. You're not just going to have the standard stone and blacktop because of the situation that's underneath.
Has there been, was any of the concept of roller compacted concrete considered?
Ran that by them, and they said, in this situation, it won't work.
Because of the uncertainty of the subsoils?
I didn't ask them to explain their definition. I ran it by them, and that was the outcome. There was 2 other techniques that are explained in the proposal, actually in the original draft, that also they do not recommend doing it. Like a typical strip and overlay, they say don't do that because the foundation is pretty unsuitable to be putting a parking lot on.
Mr. President, may I follow up with some numbers? Okay, sorry. So I found it. Capital reserve, I told you, is $5,255,487. I have budgeted, now whether it goes through or not is assigned to the purchase of the land, the 20 acres, $343,335 would be what we currently would owe, depending on, the sales agreement. Assigned for the capital projects or the Columbia Montour Votech is $781,550. And then, of course, the parking lot and any additional costs that we would incur above and beyond what the bond has for the athletic fields. Thank you.
Any other conversation? Any other? Okay, I need a second.
Yeah, you have your,
Sure,
you
yeah,
have your
we're
motion
second.
and second, yeah. You're
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Ready? Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve payment of $2,300 to Danville Area Community Center for the rental of one soccer field located at the soccer park on East Market Street, Danville, for the spring 2020-22 season.
A motion.
I second.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. The board will take action to approve an out-of-state field trip to Washington, D.C. for 3 students to compete in the National Catholic Forensics League Grand National Tournament contingent upon the availability of Danville Area School District staff to accompany and chaperone the students. Departure from Danville will be Friday, May 27th at 2022, and return Monday, May 30th, 2022. School district transportation will be arranged.
A motion.
So cost is not mentioned here, so do we have any ballpark of what the expenses will be?
Right
Oh.
now, the parents are handling those things, but we did put the contingent that it has to have a Danville Area School District staff go along. We won't allow the students to go on our transportation without having our staff. And then what might turn out is the parents might just do it themselves. But we wanted to make sure our staff is involved.
I second it.
Can I ask you a can I ask a real quick question? Do we, and this is, not having been here, do we recognize kids like this at meetings, or do we not do that anymore?
I do.
Do we?
Yeah,
Okay. I'm
I
just
do. That's
curious.
part of the superintendent.
Yeah, I know we've had swimmers and wrestlers and, all right, good enough.
And they send it to me.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, how you where those came from. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve an out-of-state trip for the Sea Perch team to participate in a competition at the University of Maryland College Park. The team will leave on June 3rd, 2022, return June 4th, 2022. They'll be using one school van for transportation. The trip will be of no other cost to the district.
A motion.
Second.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes.
All right, special education plan is part of our comprehensive planning, and it is now posted for review for 28 days, and then it'll be voted on. So I just wanted you to know that it's out there for under review. If you have any questions, to please contact myself or Miss Winrick, the Director of Special Education. But, you know, I just hope that you take a look at it. We have worked with the Bureau of Special Ed at the state level to make sure this is appropriate and complete.
The board will take action to approve the e-tool agreement between Danville Area School District and Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit in the amount of $3,000.
Again, just comment on this. The fact that if we have it, it would be in the budget, but if we have it signed prior to May 31st, we get a discount. And so that's why I wanted to bring it to the board so that it could be issued before the budget may be finalized.
I motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, finance reports. Oh. Three, yeah. Okay, the board will take action to approve the bills for payment for April 5th, 2022 through May 3rd, 2022 as presented.
Motion. Second.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve the Cincinnati Insurance Company's Builder's Risk Insurance for the Liberty Valley primary school projects in the amount of $8,089 as presented.
I motion. Approve.
Did I get a second? I'll second.
I'm waiting. Go. What does this protect us from? What's the purpose of the insurance? I'm familiar with builder's risk.
Yeah,
and
wouldn't the
just-
builder have their own?
Well, that's why I'm asking, yeah. 'Cause sometimes they do, sometimes it's run through the district. I forget what it's called. Seen both.
And do you have
Yeah.
anything additional from KCB?
You have the document with things.
Do you have anything additional from KCBA who've requested us to get the quotes for builder's risk insurance? And I did receive 4 quotes, and Cincinnati Insurance Companies was the lowest.
Right. No, typically on a project like this size, it's the owner's responsibility to get the builder's risk insurance.
Okay.
It protects us against, well, for one thing, it's going to be almost like a liability insurance for the school to cover itself. It also covers a portion, I have to see exactly what the policy does. I think it covers a portion of the construction too, should something go wrong and they find something faulty with the construction. But that's what I'm trying not to
It's
to do.
showing it's only for 3 months.
I'm sorry?
It's showing you the policy period's 3 months.
I didn't look at
The
the date.
majority of it is going to be over the summer months, so
Right.
that is the policy period.
Right.
The
This-
majority of the Liberty Valley
The substantial completion date on the project is the last week of August. There will be some work left to do. Two of the rooftop units aren't showing up till November, but most of it will be done that time period.
Do have a little bit of breakdown, I don't know. Builder risk hard cost is covered, 366,400. Okay, so this is the actual agenda. So collapse is based on our property limit. Construction contract penalty is $10,000. Debris removal of covered property from a covered loss is 25% of the loss, plus 25, within limits, plus 25,000. Emergency removal expenses, 10,000. Expediting expenses, 10,000. Fire department service charges, 10,000. Fire extinguisher recharge, 10,000. Foundation excavations, gradings, and fillings of land, including as covered property, is our property limit. Fraud and fraud is 50,000. Ordinance of new construction, 50,000. Plans and blueprints, 25,000. Property in transit and at storage locations, 50,000. Sorry, I'm just reading from the document, but, so it covers the school district.
I think we've had it once before on a project. I'm pretty sure we did.
So when we come up with these contracts, when we come up with these agreements with these contractors and they say, okay, we can have this done in 3 months. If they don't get that done in 3 months, do we impose any kind of penalty on them? Because
No.
it's gonna increase our cost, because we're gonna get more insurance over time and other costs that are due to the school. And typically, when a governmental entity enters into an agreement, if that agreement isn't completed by the date agreed upon, there are penalties imposed. Do we ever do anything like that?
But you're asking if we can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think
And I can-
solicitor probably is the best
And
one
I
to
can,
ask.
yeah, and I can speak generally to that with respect to, they're called AIA documents. You would look to see within there if they provide for liquidated damages. As a general matter for shorter projects, it's likely unlikely, but that's typically why we as solicitors request to review those documents, because they're typically generated more towards the protection of the architect rather than the owner. And we always insert clauses to include, time is of the essence. But as a general matter, courts don't like liquidated damages clauses, and if they're truly seen as like a penalty, they don't like to enforce them. So there has to be really some type of damage to do it. But the short answer to your question would be, we'd have to look at what the proposed AIA documents are providing.
And we did run that through the solicitor's office, so they have been reviewed by the solicitor's office.
We got a second, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah, ma'am.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yeah.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve the agreement between the Danville Area School District and Wagner, Dries, Alasser and Associates, P.C. to perform real estate tax audit services in the amount not to exceed $6,500 for the year ending December 31st, 2021, as presented.
Motion?
Second.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve the Danville Head Start to apply for the supplemental 2.28%.
Wait a minute, you missed 11.6.
Did I miss one?
11.6.
Oh, my apologies.
0.6.
Already marked that one.
Okay. All right. The board will take action to approve the audit service agreement between the Danville Area School District and Wagner, Dries, Losser and Associates for the year ending June 30th, 2022, in the amount not to exceed $24,500 as presented.
The first one was the taxes to get audited, and the second one is the whole school district.
You get a motion to approve?
I motion.
Second.
Dr. Gatacho,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Now we'll do it. The board will take action to approve Danville Head Start to apply for the supplemental 2.28% cost of living adjustment, funds for the amount of $24,750, and quality improvement funds in the amount of $10,000, for a total of $34,750 to be used to increase staff salaries, offset increases to fringe benefits, and support dual language learners as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatacho,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. The board will take action to approve Danville Head Start's budget for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
Make motion.
Second.
Any comment?
I have a question. Not only on the Head Start budget, but just the entire budget and the process. I'm not on the Finance Committee. I've read through things, obviously, and we have a significant deficit. Is there some point at which there are requests for items to be placed in the budget, and the point at which it gets to us, where anything's being reduced or modified, or do we just get the full request when it comes to the board?
No. Well, with Head Start budget, it's separate because that is federal funds and it's already assigned, okay? It's a little bit different, but
There's
with,
no local funds going into Head Start here?
correct.
I think so. I know it's
Yeah.
I know it's a federal program.
And pre-K counts as a state program.
Yeah.
So
So-
they're not included in local funds.
Right.
All employees, including the director of Head Start and pre-K counts, are either state funded from pre-K counts, or for this instance, Head Start is federally funded, including the director's salary, so no funds come out of the general operating
Okay.
budget.
Because I was going to ask the same question about the budget later, and I figured I should ask this at this point as well. So, okay, I'm fine. Thank you.
Dr. Boyle, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So, at one point in the future, maybe it's worth presenting, having a 10-minute presentation on how these financial decisions come, not specific numbers, but in terms of how the budgets make themselves through this process to be presented to the board for approval. I think sometimes some of the staff members may, board members may be, I would say, more comfortable if they understand the background process that brings all this money to the fore for voting. It's not just a random number, it's something that's based on evidence, so.
Want me to give some information now?
If you have time, or if you, yeah,
Just,
absolutely.
it'll only take a couple minutes. What happens with the budget is there is initial discussion as far as within the buildings and from their teachers, et cetera. The principals then go through that and make determinations of what's reasonable and what's not, and try to pare it down at that point. what we do, Bobby and I do, is meet with every one of the administrators regarding their budget, show them the historical piece of it, what the expectation could be, and how to trim it. We have worked very diligently over the past few years that I've been here to make sure we're not having fluff in the budget, because a lot of the time we were finding that at the end of the year, there was money left over, so people were like, oh, okay, I've got another $100,000 left in my budget, so I can go do this or that. We're trying to make the budgets realistic so that they aren't having excess money to manage at the end of the year. And we found this past year, Bobby, you were at 3% within your budget. So, yeah, we were within 3% for expenses as to what was budgeted. That's a pretty exceptional feat for a business manager to complete. So we do line by line item with every single administrator in this process to question things and make notes on what we're seeing.
And also, what's the role of the auditors at the end of a fiscal year? I mean, do they go through this and say, this is fair, this is not fair?
They look at our internal control process, making sure that we have the proper internal control process to catch the items such as the bank fraud that we had this past couple months that I've been dealing with the bank, counterfeit check. So they make sure we have the proper internal control processes for those type of things. Make sure we're following federal guidelines and reporting guidelines for all of our federal programs, including Head Start, but also Title I, Title II, and Title IV, along with all the ESSER money that we received for COVID. And so they, of course, can't audit every single dollar amount in the school district because they don't have the time to audit $45 million line by line, but they spot check and make sure our internal control processes are in place.
Thank you.
Get a motion in a second, right?
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatacho,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Board will take actions to approve Danville Head Start's continuation application for school year 2022 and 2023.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatacho,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. The board will take action to approve the budget transfers for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
I motion.
Second.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatacho,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. So this was put on the agenda. Right, do I just skip it? Okay, floor is open for budget discussion.
We're still at the same point we were. Preliminary was approved, there were 5 people that approved it, correct?
Yes.
We're still open to discussion toward
yes.
toward the final budget, okay, and where we're going with this, all right, I appreciate that. And I'm not on the finance committee. My understanding is our deficit's a little over $2 million, correct? A little less than that if we do the tax increase. You don't have to look up exact again. Okay, I guess we have to decide what level of deficit budget we're willing to accept and what kind of sacrifices we're willing to make, and are we going to? I know that I believe it was our solicitor talked about what can happen if you expend your fund balance to the point where you're in the negative. I believe that was true. If not, please correct me. And you know, it's kind of concerning that we're this deep in the hole and our fund balance is down to about $7 million, and that's not a pleasant outlook. I mean, some of us will be off the board probably by the time we get to the point where there's a crisis, but it's certainly looming, and I think our responsibility is to, you know, obviously the first thing is to the kids and make sure they have everything they need and we provide the proper education, but secondly to the constituency, and really look hard and see what we can do to try to reduce the deficit and look into the tax increase if necessary. Now, and I'm not sure about process here either. The paving was previously in the yearly budget. We've talked about that. I know you had that.
So I had a
think.
placeholder in the maintenance budget. Obviously, if it was being funded out of the general fund, it would, there's a special code to transfer it to a capital project, but if it's not being funded out of the general budget, then we could remove that. But my placeholder was only $300,000, so it definitely wasn't enough to cover the $900,000.
How do we make the decision to do that, to make that adjustment? It's certainly not my decision. It's something we all have to weigh in on, but
Right, we talked about it in finance committee. Of course, the board is all new. There was
Yeah.
lots of board turnover. So we did discuss it in finance committee, how some of these smaller building and ground projects should be funded out of the general operating, because that's not gonna go away on year to year. We're gonna have to have some improvements to the buildings and grounds on an annual basis, instead of keep taking from the capital reserve and not have the money for our real capital projects, the larger capital projects.
okay. So
And that was a discussion in
so the
previous
committee is
finance
recommending
committee.
that it not be taken out of the capital
I
reserve, or?
don't think, so, the original committee was recommending that when I started the budget process. So this committee, kind of got thrown in it in January, so I don't think I have a recommendation from the current committee as it sits currently.
Okay, I'll give a quick opinion. The capital reserve has money, the yearly budget doesn't. That's, to me, it's pretty obvious it should come out of the capital reserve, but that's just my feeling.
And I did address that in finance committee and stated that, and as well as in the public. And I stated it could come out of capital reserve.
And I'm personally comfortable, and I talked to Dr. Boyle about this, and Celia, I really appreciate your response. I probably said it in too lengthy a way, and I can be clearer. I think there's a good deficit, and that's the debt service, because you did well as a board and yourself in the refinancing. It's going to cost everybody less money over time, but up front, it's costing us an additional $450,000, $500,000. I'm comfortable with that as a deficit because everybody benefits. Other than that, I think we really need to spend some time on this. I know districts everywhere are doing it. It's certainly not just Danville. It's happening everywhere. I'm seeing special meetings. I'm seeing an awful lot of things in the newspaper about how people are trying to cut down their deficit because they're looking at the same thing.
Correct.
Because I think a lot of things happened over the last few years that weren't anticipated. ESSER's money certainly helped, but didn't solve it. I believe last year there was a lot of ESSER's money that was applied to a deficit. That's not there anymore. That's the way it looks. So it's a lot, and I'm hoping that this is not a closed process. We continue to look at it closely.
Yes, the ESSER money was a Band-Aid for sure, and current year is also using ESSER money to fund the deficit
Right.
from the current year.
Yeah.
So that will continue to grow every year.
That's another looming issue.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So, Bobby, one of the things we discussed was that our capital fund, if you don't mind going to the percentages that we need to maintain, if we use it for these projects, how low it's gonna be and how safe it is in terms of it affects so many things, including our bond ratings.
Right, so the previous board at this point, I'm sorry, it's too many turnovers, had requested that about 20% of the annual district's revenue be set aside in the capital, or in the fund balance. So 20% of the 2021 revenue would have been $8.6 million. Currently in the general fund, as of 6/30/21, we had $7.3 million, and capital reserve, the $5.255 million.
Right.
So a total of 12,616,000. That's 29.22%. So when you add them together, we're still within the 20%. Now we are using them for quite a large project, the middle school paving, it was already approved tonight. So that would be coming out of capital reserve, the payment of the land across the way, and the Columbia Montour Votech. So just remember, with all of that being paid, we are getting closer to that 20% amount.
But that 20% was determined, I know that you said previous, but isn't there a best practices?
So our financial consultant, we use PFM Consulting, and Moody's rating, and when I had this conversation with them, they said 25% is best practice and to not reduce our credit rating. And right now, Danville is a high credit rating school district. We have a good credit rating score.
We're still at 29%.
Right now, 29.22 as of
Which will-
6/30
Which will go down with
of
the paving
21.
and the.
Correct.
Right, okay. All right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I actually have significant concerns with the budget from the perspective is that it does not appear that even with the tax raise, we have a plan to reduce the amount of deficit we have going forward. And, you know, I, for one, am still having difficulty coming to the point where I'm willing to vote for the increasing taxes with 8 to 10% inflation, and without a solid plan to reduce our sort of deficit spending. One of the things that I would be interested to see is the amount of money budgeted in various parts of the organization come April, because I'm hearing not insubstantial stories of large amounts of money being spent beyond April to try to make the total budget numbers of what was allocated, because of the fear that they're not going to get the same amount of money allocated next year. And I'm curious why we don't routinely sweep money from those accounts sometime around April and then make people justify how and what they're spending after that point. I mean, I'm hearing stories of supplies being thrown away to make room for the new supplies, which money that is left over is being spent on. I'm hearing stories of new furniture being purchased when the old furniture is still good because there's leftover money in the individual accounts. I'm hearing a lot of different stories along those lines. And that's a substantial concern to me, especially when I have to go to the taxpayers and say, I want more of your money in a setting where your money is not worth nearly as much as it used to be and people are struggling. On top of that, I think that there are some obligations which we haven't fully considered and need to consider. One of them is the support personnel, including our paras, which we're having significant difficulty hiring into those positions. And we are going to lose a fair number of more in the current conditions because we're paying something like $11 an hour and Burger King is paying $15 an hour. And the job of a para is extraordinarily difficult. As one former para put it to me, you have to know everything that the teacher does and how to do it without the pay or the degree. And if we're paying people less than Burger King is currently paying people to do those jobs, I think without both covering that gap and continuing to pay the high-quality people that we have in the support positions, we are going to struggle to actually provide the kind of education we do in the individual classrooms. Because I don't think people actually understand how important the para positions are, how much they actually do, and how much they allow the actual classrooms to function and the teachers to actually teach. So without them, the teachers in the individual classrooms can't do their job. So I see two problems here. I see stories, though unsubstantiated at this current time, that people are spending money in ways that they don't need to be spent, which goes back to Wayne's concern about the auditing of what's actually going into these budgets and how they're being spent. And two, you know, we have some expenses that we definitely have to find a way to fit in. And, you know, in the context of already having a deficit, makes it a very hard pill to swallow. So I think there needs to be a better plan to look at, one, how people are actually spending the money that we're giving them, because I'm not entirely confident in the current auditing process that's going on. Two, a plan for how we are going to, moving forward, not have the deficit that we currently have. And 3, how we're going to retain people like the paras who clearly need more money because you can't pay them $11 an hour when Burger King is paying $15 an hour. So that's my perspective. I just wanted to spit that out there. It's not that I can't be convinced to raise taxes if we have to, but I'm only going to do it in the context of that we have a plan for what to do, that I can go to taxpayers, look them in the eye, and say to them, this money's not going to be wasted on buying furniture that we don't need or supplies that we already have.
If we have additional questions on line items and other things, do you want us to do that through someone, through yourself, through Dr. Boyle, through Ms. Zealy? I don't want to go through a bunch of line items here tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the purpose of this, and I don't want to make Bobby sit over there and look through everything. And I think you do a really nice job. Your job is to take everything that's given to you and put it in a format that's easily understood, read, give presentations. You do it very well. So please don't take it that way. But we're sitting here in a large deficit, and we need to find a way to work our way through it, and I just don't think we're making any progress toward that.
We need a work session.
Yeah.
Where we're going to
This is it.
publicly talk about these things. And the only thing that we're going to do during that session is look at the line items and have a discussion about how to do this better. I mean, I think we owe it to the public to do it publicly.
I do too. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we need to know personnel issues that we're dealing with too. And you'll never get a vote for me to furlough anyone. I believe very strongly that when somebody's hired, they should have a job, and we need to find a way to keep them employed and work our way through it. But as positions are vacant, we need to see what's needed and what isn't, and class size averages and all those things that I think you just need to look at when you're in a deficit situation. It's a little late, but
But that's something that we have done with every position that has come open, and tried to look at how to realign other people in some of the positions, how to do things administratively differently. So we have addressed some of those things and make the attempt. We do know that, you know, come the future, we've got an older group of teachers that probably within the next 2 or 3 years will be retiring. And when we look at those positions, we will be analyzing, or I would recommend that we analyze very carefully how and what we want to do differently if we possibly can, and still provide the adequate amount of academic instruction.
I just think when we're in this deep a deficit, and that very well may be true, that it's become something the administration's done the job as well as they can do. You're telling us that, then we need to see a lot more of it.
Yeah, I can't take that for granted. I need to understand more in order to accept that and to vote for it. And I think we need a working session to talk about
Yeah.
these things. I mean, it's fine to keep things in the finance committee and for there to be more understanding and interest and
Yeah.
discussion in there, but the board as a whole needs to vote for it. And if what's coming back from the finance committee isn't satisfactory to get people to vote pro or
Yeah. No, I respect the fact you've done what you can do. You've done the administrative work you can do. It now is in the board's hands, and
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is I can't vote for it in its current form, and I need to see more and try to find a way to work through to make a better situation for us. Before I would vote for it, and you have 8 other people, and maybe they disagree, but that's how I feel.
I know Bobby and I would appreciate, we've asked repeatedly for any questions or concerns prior to this meeting, and really I got a few things from you, Wayne, but generally I did not. You know, Dr. Green, I had not been aware of what claim you are making. To our knowledge, that isn't something that we've seen, but we will explore that. But I would appreciate if we have concerns and questions, even if we're going to do a work session, that we be given the information and the questions ahead of time so that we are prepared and we aren't fumbling through paperwork trying to find answers for you, but that we have the opportunity to give you your answers appropriately and timely.
Can I add some more comment here? So we have had a discussion about this a few years ago for those of you who have not been on the board yet. But we discussed about the things that you mentioned earlier where the individuals will have budgets and when they did not finish it, they want to run it out, and you were able to detect. I don't think there was any wastage I'm not aware of, but there was a possibility that they can spend money on things that they really don't need.
There's an easy way to solve that. You sweep everything up at April, and then you make them come and request individually. But we can also know that by looking at what was left in the budgets at the end of April.
So that's what they did.
Yeah.
Actually, based on patterns, they were able to say, you know, normally I think principals request a certain budget and you say, last year you have spent this much, or whoever the requester is, and this time if you request this much, we're not gonna give it to you because this is how much you spent based on the past. So the past has strong predictive ability of the future. So that's, but I'm not objecting to this thing, but work session is necessary. We spoke about this for many meetings. Now, when is the deadline to approve budgets? So that we can have this session,
June 30th.
is that June 30th or sooner?
No, the current deadline that the board is facing is no later than May 31st. The school district has to adopt a proposed final version. We did? Okay.
You did that.
So then the next deadline is June 20th.
Okay, so at least, maybe we should at least
Proposed final.
plan for a couple of sessions where we can talk about budget and anything else that's necessary.
So that's actually done as well, I'm sorry. So we did the proposed final, and it has to be adopted 30 days past. So 10 days for advertising, like I said in the last meeting, and 20 days prior to the final. So June 30th is the correct date to adopt the final budget.
We have some time.
How much of what was just shared as a group is part of the scope of an audit? How much of these checks, balances, processes, protocols, all that encumbered in the scope of what we paid an auditor to do?
So
and continue to
external
do?
auditor would not look at how much was spent in the last quarter of the fiscal year. They're just looking at budget to actual, and that's what's reported in the financial statements. You'll see the budgeted to actual, so it won't look to see if there was a mad dash to spend the funds. I will explain, so I'm gonna use Ken's budget as an example. Now, the maintenance, sorry, Ken, the maintenance budget, if he sees that he does have money, he does work on additional projects if there is money left in his budget, so then it doesn't eat up the next year's budget. So there are some legit claims, like the maintenance budget that does do that, but for the basis of not using it in the next fiscal year. But so we can review that in detail. And then, so which part exactly were you thinking about for the
I've
audit?
just opened it up to this. This is a hearty discussion. I just wanted to, we're spending $24,000 to get audited, and we came out with 5-star, all thumbs up, and I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that.
Right, so they're just making sure that we're following financial, generally accepted accounting principles, so they're not gonna look at, they look at your budget to actual, did we perform how we did? We said we were going to, they're gonna look at that, they're gonna check to make sure things are overview of coded correctly. They're going to dive into deep to federal programs, and they have to monitor our highest federal programs, and they look at detailed expenditures, make sure the procurement was followed correctly, things of that nature. But again, the last quarter spending, they don't really care if we spent in the last quarter, they're just looking for the budget to actual amounts to make sure.
And then the only other point I just want to put out there for us to not lose sight of, the other part of our responsibility as board members is governance, not management. So I just want to throw that into the discussion, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I know sometimes we find, and I know I'm been over the couple of years, sometimes get into that realm of digging into things that isn't my responsibility. So I'm not saying that's the case, but I just think that we should be cognizant that that's our responsibility as a collective board, that we're governance, and we have hired administration to do the management.
Thank you. Final approval of the budget is the board's responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Understood.
So I think at this time, do we want to try to schedule something so I can be prepared for the next meeting?
I think we should really, 'cause we had to have concrete plans in terms of dates. I suggest two, one for May, one in May, one in June. Maybe the second meeting may not be necessary, but at least if we have these meetings in place and we know we're gonna come and take care of business, I think we'd be better off. Everybody would have their answers before we finalize the budget.
And I want to just say that I do know our solicitors, Mondays are very packed, sometimes they're triple booked. So we want to be careful as to what time that we make sure the solicitor can be present as well.
I think if it's a work session and not a voting session, we could probably do the finance without the solicitor. No offense to the solicitor.
One,
Shall I?
one thing for the future, I was looking for it and I can't find it, but I recall it from doing the PSBA training. One of the things that PSBA recommends, and I'll go back and look and find the exact dates, they actually recommend that we start these discussions much earlier than we've had them in this form. And I think one of the concerns from my perspective is that we haven't had long enough to think about and look at this, and that it would have been much nicer to have these discussions much early on. And I know that changes the workflow for administration, but some of the best practice guidelines, I remember thinking as I was looking at it that we were having these discussions much later than the best practice guidelines advised. So we should at least think about that for the future, because it would avoid like the last minute having to jam meetings in to try to discuss the line items.
So I wanted to remind the board and the public that the board did change, and these were discussed. Part of the budget was discussed, and it started in September, the discussions, and continued on. The new board members didn't receive the information, but it was discussed, and we are trying to get out the information. There's a lot of board change recently. So the process does go. I know Mr. Burkhart has been part of it previously, Dr. Getachew. I mean, this process is started a lot earlier. It's just when the new board members have received it is a little later then.
Yeah.
And we have repeated a few sessions actually, in terms of we have repeated the same topic a couple of times to get people up to speed.
Yeah. I've been on the board before, worked with you before, and worked with this another district, and I feel behind on things just because of the transition and coming on. That's not anybody's fault. It's just you have a lot of new people, and we're just trying to catch up on things, and it's hard to work your way through a deficit of this level. And it's just something, but it's got to be done.
So shall we think of May 23, so a couple of weeks from today? Yes.
I mean, I don't mind that. With a lot of other people.
Yeah, I'm trying to just get one number or one date going, so
That works.
at least we can work ourselves into.
I'll
coming to
second
this.
it. I'll
Does
second
it
it.
work? Yeah.
May 23rd, does that,
Oh,
I mean,
It's
we
2
try to-
weeks, it's Monday, 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
6 p.m.
We could
That a
make
good
6
time?
PM, that would be better, to get a little bit earlier for
That's
timeline.
fine with me. Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, a work session
It's a
meeting.
work session.
No voting.
No voting, just budget talk.
And we will advertise. We'll need to.
Monday, May 23rd, 6 o'clock. Is that a motion or anything, or?
No.
No, we don't have to make
Doesn't
that a
need a
motion?
motion.
Okay.
We can try.
June 13th is our next board meeting.
Does anybody want to propose a date in June? Try and set that up too? The 13th is our
So
normal
how about,
meeting?
how
The
about
13th is our normal meeting, so the Monday before is the 6th.
Oh, so the second meeting in June would be the June 6th?
No, June 13th is the
Is a
second
regular-
Monday in June is our regularly scheduled meeting.
So
We-
we have June 20, what was the deadline?
June 30th, it has
30th.
to be completed by.
Can we wait and see how the 23rd goes?
Yeah, you want to do
I-
it before the board meeting?
I suggest that we wait until we see how the 23rd goes
Maybe we'll
with the work
finish.
session.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah, we
thinking
can do
saving
that.
on advertising.
And then we
Okay.
decide at that point if we need another one.
Yeah, it's all right with me if it's all right with everybody else.
Okay, May 23rd it is. Is there any further comment on the budget?
Again, get those questions and concerns to us so that we can discuss it. And if anybody wants to meet with Bobby and I, or Bobby or I, let us know, and we can talk to you individually as well, so that you're prepared as well.
Okay, we're on 12-4, right? And consent, 12-4. That's the very first one.
12-3.
12-3, yeah.
Just to note that we had put a new hire on for 12-3, but they called and declined the offer, so we won't be voting on that. Bye.
Okay. The board will take action to approve the employment of Catherine Fetterman as emotional support teacher at Liberty Valley Intermediate at a contracted yearly salary of $54,693, effective August 30th, 2022.
A motion.
Second. Mr. Clauser, just one quick question for Dr. Boyle. Again, another question about process of how we hire. This paraprofessional thing, I was educated in the past few days, and it was really needless to say that Dr. Green mentioned those things, but I think those payments seem just a little too low. I'm completely aware of the fact that when increasing the salary from what they have now to 13, 14 implies close to $300,000, $400,000 of budget increase in there. But it's just not a good feeling that I had after discussing with these people, to be honest.
Okay, all the employees basically are covered by some type of union.
Correct.
So, with the exception of course, administrators and a few others. So the support staff, which incorporates the paraprofessionals, maintenance, custodians, that type of support, is a contract. That contract expires June 30th of '23. In order to make any changes, we have to open that contract, and that's not something that has been chosen to do at this point. Remember, the $11.41 is the first year of employment. So those that have been here for more time make more money. It's not everybody makes that amount. That's for the first year of employment, so it changes.
Okay.
And it's about a 30-cent an hour raise for each year in that contract. Not exact, but that's about what it is in average. All right?
So not to relate it to that, in terms of the hiring process, that's some question I had from the community, is that what's the process you use to hire
To hire
teachers? Or,
okay.
Any staff, any teaching
Well,
staff?
teachers are different than support staff. For teachers, what we do is we pull all of the applications together, the various administrators that would be working with that type of staff, plus myself or Dr. Pickhart, yes and no, depending on the grouping. We'll look at all the applications that we get up until the point we decide to start our interviews. And looking at those applications, they filter out the ones that they feel would be someone they would like to look into, others that they don't. And we kind of have some that are like iffy, you know, and we add those as well. The first step for teachers is we request 2 videos from the teachers. One is an introduction of themselves. A second one is a lesson that they have been given. This is especially for elementary school. A lesson that they have been given the standard and the expectations of what the lesson would be about. We don't give them specific, we give them, you know, the general standard and then what we expect. They then will give that presentation on their video for the elementary. In the other cases, for like social studies today, we had, and for the ag program, the other ones that you don't get as many individuals to apply. We have those teachers have their first interview, we narrow those teachers down, and then they do a lesson in front of students, is what we've been doing. For the elementary teachers, we then bring them in for an initial first interview, and then we have also done second interviews. We interviewed, I'll have to look here quick if I have it at my fingertips. we interviewed a lot of candidates. So, about 27 individuals were asked to send in their videos. And then from there, we did 16 interviews for the 7 positions that we've talked about tonight. So we've gone, significantly into it, and it was a group of administrators and teachers are involved as well. So we try and make sure that's happening. Social studies, they did their interview, or their lesson today. We have 2 more tomorrow to do, I believe. I think 1 may have dropped out, but we have another one at least tomorrow for social studies. And then from there, we have them come out of the lesson and we discuss the lesson with them, their process, their how they've come about, how they teach. And then we will sit down as a team again and talk to one another and figure out which candidates we would like to recommend. If we come up with 2 or 3 that we think we would like to go and we only have 1 position, we'll do another set of interviews to keep teasing it out.
Do you use a scoring system? of
Yes,
any
we do.
type? Okay.
Yes. Sorry about that. There is a scoring system involved as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Since Johannes reopened this just a little, I just wanted to make one other comment on the paraprofessionals. If we have to renegotiate their contract, that may be something that it's well worth the board considering. So if you look at the surrounding wages that they're currently being paid, Bloomsburg is paying $14 an hour, Lewisburg is paying $15 an hour, and Berwick is paying almost $14 an hour. And the ticket takers at our, I've at least been informed that the ticket takers at our individual sports events are making more money than our paraprofessionals are. So I think we need to do some long, hard thinking about this may be one of the places where spending some extra money is well worth it, because the impact that they have on the children's lives is far greater than the people taking tickets for our sports events. And so I just wanted, since you brought that back up, to re-comment on that with a little extra tidbit of data, so it may be something that's well worth us considering reopening it, because if we wait till 2023 when the contract expires, we already have a hiring gap of 7 or 8, I think. That may be 10 or 15, because why would you continue to work in this district when you go to Bloomsburg for $14 an hour, or like I said, work at McDonald's for $15 an hour?
Yeah, I don't.
And before, I don't want the
Go
board to get too far into public discussions regarding the collective bargaining agreement, particularly because it's not open yet. So I would caution the board to not engage in further discussions out in the public session. If you want to do that, we can have an executive session, but at this time, I would just caution the board to avoid that for right now.
Fair enough.
I had a second on this, right? If I remember correctly.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve the employment of Vanessa Hunter as 4th grade teacher at Liberty Valley Intermediate at the contracted yearly salary of $54,693, effective August 30th?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Motion to approve the employment of Savannah Garrett as a kindergarten teacher at Danville Primary School, the contracted yearly salary of $55,193, effective August 30th, 2022.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yep.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, and a motion to approve the employment of Jenna Biter as kindergarten teacher at Danville Primary School at the contracted yearly salary.
No, we skipped one.
My apologies, I did
Sarah.
skip Sarah Will.
I'll be happy.
Okay. Take action to approve the employment of Sarah Wilt as long-term substitute kindergarten teacher at Danville Primary School at a prorated base salary of $54,693, effective August 30th, 2022.
Motion.
Second.
Dr. Katachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. Need a motion to approve the employment of Ciara Tharp as long-term substitute. Jenna Biter, I thought we did already.
And then you backed up.
I'm one behind. All right, let me make sure I get this right this time. One behind. All right, motion to approve employment of Jenna Biter as kindergarten teacher at the Danville Primary School at a contracted yearly salary of $54,693, effective August 30th.
Second.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. Make sure I get this one right here. Okay, the board will take action to approve the employment of Ciara Tharp as long-term substitute kindergarten teacher at Danville Primary School at a prorated base salary of $54,693, effective August 30th, 2022, pending all required documentation.
Should be first grade. Right, it should be first grade.
Okay, so she's first grade now.
Amy, first grade, correct? Thank you.
Motion to approve for first grade.
Question?
Second.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. The board will take action to approve the employment of Cassidy Pantaloni as an elementary intervention teacher at a yearly salary of $55,193, using ARP ESSER funds for 1 year effective August 30th, 2022.
Motion?
Second.
Who second? Mr. Kroll? Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes. The board will take action to approve the employment of Kayla Rehar as a fourth grade learning support teacher at Liberty Valley Intermediate at the contracted yearly salary of $59,872, effective August 30th, 2022.
A motion.
Second?
Mr. Vognetz?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Clauser?
Yes.
nice to see so many people new to the profession put in front of us. Wish them all luck. It's exciting day for a lot of people when they get their first job, so thank
Well,
you.
and some of them are experienced with out-of-state,
I see,
but we
yeah.
don't pull in the out-of-state
Right.
years, so that
I saw that.
is to our advantage as well.
Yeah, that's good. Very well done.
The board will take action to approve the 2022-2023 Liberty Valley Handbook as presented.
That's consent.
Consent.
It is consent. We can keep it.
Yes, it's moving on. It's not.
This is good.
This one now.
Oh, that, okay, we removed that one. Actually,
Didn't we remove
They-
that?
no, we
They
got it.
pulled 13.5.
We gotta go to
13.6.
13.5.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
13.6.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot those two.
Okay, second reading. Policy number 204, attendance. Proof for, or a motion to, for the second reading. You asked for it to be.
Yeah, I know, I'm not quite there with this one yet, I'm sorry. If you want to move it for a vote, that's fine. I know I've been made the policy
you-
committee person, but I just haven't had a chance to really look at a lot of the details, but if it's ready to go ahead and go with it.
It's just the second reading, so.
Yeah, I understand. I just saw some things in the second reading, but I at least wanted to say that I think it deserves a little bit more of a look, and I felt the same way about 006, because it's a lot easier to delay them than to change them. Policies are really stubborn once you have them. But if you want to move forward, that's entirely up to you as the president. I'm just not sure I can vote for it just yet.
Okay, question for you, Mr. Brookhart.
Yeah,
If we vote and it comes down to no, we can present them another time?
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I would think. I
Yeah,
would
there are some
fit
things that are
preference.
happening throughout schools right now with attendance that are just kind of really difficult to get a handle on, not just here. And
Yeah.
as I looked at it again, I thought, that's not really how things are done. You didn't do it. It came from PSBA.
Right, and again, it reflects what the newer laws are on
Yeah.
attendance. So
Yeah, I
that's
know.
where
Okay.
We tried to match it up correctly,
Oh, I understand.
but that's fine with me if we want.
Well, these are going to take effect in July, right?
Cor-
They go July, I mean, normally, we would look at attendance change on July 1st for the next school year when
Right.
the kids come in again. You're not going to change anything this year,
No,
right?
No.
I mean, kids are almost finished. So
yeah, it doesn't,
can I make a motion to table? And ask that
Second.
we bring
I'll
it back in
second it.
June, only for that
That's fine.
reason? And I'm
That's
not
fine.
looking at any particular issues, I just know
no,
once
but we
it's,
can discuss it then.
once
That
it's
would
in,
be
it's
fine.
hard to get it out.
Got a second?
You want to make a motion to table both of them, or just
I
one?
would, yeah, I would.
Okay, then make that motion.
I'll make a motion to table 006 and,
13.5 and
what's the number?
13.6.
13.5 and 13.6, yeah.
I second that.
These get pretty intricate. And-
I'll
Or I
appreciate
did
the
this for a
help.
lot of years, and that's,
I'll appreciate it.
okay.
That's fine.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, before we start reading the wrong thing, that was 006 also, that was in there.
Yeah, both of
Okay.
them. The motion was for both of them, yeah.
Okay.
That was pulled.
The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the 2021-2022 bus driver list for the Danville Area School District as presented, pending all required documentation.
And I will say I do check documentation before I ask for them to be approved.
Yeah, okay.
Motion.
Second.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, the board will take action to approve the repayment agreements for the 2020-2021 transportation reconciliation as was presented.
Motion.
Second.
May I ask a question? Earlier, you said the solicitor was looking at the repayments.
These contracts are what we got from the solicitor to take care of.
Okay,
So that's already been cleared through them before we even presented it.
okay.
So the agreement was reviewed by the solicitor before. Now, the reconciliation happened internally,
Yes,
because of due to the change in software. It was reviewed internally and found the error,
Yeah.
within a fiscal year, within 12 months of the payments.
Yep.
So then we brought in PASBO to
Yeah.
recheck our information. That was my presentation, and get their recommendation on how to move forward with the error. And they had recommended 3 options, and then a 4th was presented, and this is the result of them.
okay.
How does the fourth differ, as a point of clarification?
So the 4th option that 2 of the contractors went with spread the payments over the entire length of the contract that's currently in place versus the first 2. The first one was just the last 3 or 4 payments of the fiscal year, which one contractor did go with. The second one spread it over next year and this year. And the third option was a little bit more complicated and risk for financial miscalculation, and said, you don't get a raise next year, and we'll take it out of next year's increase to the PDE subsidy amount. So it caused concern for myself for manual calculation again to be an error within my office. So I chose not even to present that option to the contractors based on the superintendent's review. And then the contractors presented a 4th option. And after reviewing it with the solicitor, they recommended us move forward with that option.
I appreciate your explanation tonight. It really clarified things I wasn't sure, but thank you.
Okay?
We got a second for that, didn't we?
What?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes,
Mr. Brookhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes. Okay, are there any board concerns and items for the next meeting agenda?
Mr. Clauser, we still have the Act 93 that expires on June 30th that we haven't addressed at this point.
Yes.
Negotiations committee, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
We're gonna-
you don't have to. I think the board does that as a whole.
What's that?
Actually, the Act 93.
And do it however you'd like to do it as a board. You just have to meet and discuss in good faith with your Act 93 people. So whether you want to do a committee, an individual, whether you want, however you want to do it, full board.
With the
It's-
meetings and everything that we're having with the budget, will the committee work better? I think.
Who wants to be on the committee?
Thanks, Mr. Burkhart, for volunteering to be the chairman of that committee.
If I were to do that, I need to know from all 9 people, first of all, who else is going to be on the committee?
Right.
And what you are willing to put forward. I think the Act 93 is already talking, right, Dr. Boyle? Good, okay. Okay.
Well,
Yeah, who do you want to work with me?
Mr. Vognetz, I believe, would do that. And is there is there a volunteer that would like to work with Mr. Burkhart?
I'm happy to.
There's your committee.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I just wanted to remind you as well that the HR payroll coordinator also is on a separate contract and is up for renewal at the same time and they follow the Act 93 agreement.
Okay, because I was wondering, because we've never approved that, have we? That was never on as an approval item.
We didn't approve it yet.
Okay.
It needs to still go through the process, just like the Act 93
Okay.
contract, but
But there's a
there's a separate contract
there's
for
a
them.
point in March that if we have not informed them that we're not moving forward, that we're moving forward.
You're renewing,
So
yes.
we've already
Past
passed
that point. And it was
Okay.
Communicated with the board president to send out to the board members that that date had come. It was in a timely manner that consisted of what was in the contract. So
Okay.
that was, so you have to renew them,
got
but
it.
depending on the details.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment? Okay, let's move on to public comment.
Heather Hackenberg, 811 C Street in Danville. I know it's been a long night, so just bear with me because I think this is something that is important and needs to be addressed. The middle school track team this year has been an absolute abomination. This is not the first time that some people on administration have heard this. I've been in contact with both Dr. Boyle and Chris Johns about Victor Paris and canceling practices constantly, his lack of oversight on the team. At a meet, he's standing on the 50-yard line doing absolutely nothing. I see him interact with no students.
Personnel.
We have high school coaches.
Hold on, this is personnel, so that,
Yeah, what we can do is we can adjourn to an executive session so that you
Oh.
can share the remainder of your 3-minute
Okay.
comments with the board.
Okay, that's fine.
A motion to adjourn to executive session. Do we want to end the meeting first?
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. I
Or
think-
let other people, oops, I'm sorry.
Are
let
there any
people
other
do the
public comment?
and adjourn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have people waiting. It's up to you guys.
Okay, is there any other public comment? No further public comment? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion
Motion.
to go to
Executive
executive.
session. I motion to go to executive session.
I second
No
that.
further action.
Oh, good for you.
We're gonna vote?
Yeah. Meeting's adjourned.